A rare display of mass defiance. Russians out in force, risking arrest to voice their anger over allegations of corruption at the highest level. Thousands heeded the call of opposition leader Alexey Navalny to take to the streets on Russia Day, with around 180 anti-corruption rallies held across the country. In Moscow, Navalny had permission to hold a demonstration, but the night before, he moved it to a new, unauthorized location. Russian police warned they would take strong action against anyone protesting against the law. An independent NGO, OVD Info, says 825 people were detained in the capital, while around 500 were held in St. Petersburg. But the protest orchestrator never made it. Navalny was detained by police outside his home before it even began. He has been sentenced to 30 days administrative arrest for repeatedly violating the law on staging rallies.
I am very pleased that people came out. I am proud that I am part of this movement in which brave, wonderful people are not afraid to go out on the streets, even under the threat of detention.
These protests were not only a test of Russian dissatisfaction with alleged political corruption, but also one of how much support Navalny still has. In March, he published a report accusing Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev of accumulating a vast private fortune, something Medvedev denies. But this sparked the largest protests Russia had seen since 2012, with more than 1,000 people arrested. The 41-year-old former lawyer is mounting his long-shot bid to unseat President Vladimir Putin in next year's election, mobilizing supporters through social media and appealing to many young Russians.
Everything that has happened again shows us that large masses of people cannot be repressed. We must take part in actions, peacefully, but if they won't let us take part, we should still go out and not wait for people's permission.
But what impact will this rare show of domestic pressure really have on President Putin? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Moscow is Oleg Kozlovsky. He's the director of the Vision of Tomorrow Center, a Russian civil society group. And from London, Alexander Nekrasov. He's a former advisor to the Kremlin. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Oleg, let me begin with you. You were on the streets, you were marching, you were protesting. Tell me why you were protesting.
Well, first of all, of course, like many Russians, I despise corruption. I see corruption as a pervasive threat and pervasive problem of Russia, and I want the government to finally go after it in a serious way, not just arresting certain figures who they consider politically dangerous at the moment or unnecessary. And it requires, I believe, a change in the ruling elite in Russia, including the president, the prime minister, the government, etc. Okay,
and you believe, Oleg, that they are unfairly targeting your friend, Mr. Navalny?
Well, Mr. Navalny is the leader of the opposition, the de facto leader of the opposition in Russia. He called for this protest. He was arrested yesterday when he was leaving his apartment and jailed for 30 days without a fair trial, without any witnesses being heard. Of course, we cannot call this a fair trial or legal action on the part of the government. It's just a way to isolate the front runner of the opposition from participating in his presidential campaign.
Okay. Alexander Nekrasov, what's wrong with people protesting against corruption? It's a good thing, right?
I think it's a good thing when people protest against corruption. What I find distasteful is when protesters mix with people who were celebrating Russia Day on Tverskaya Street in the center of Moscow and pretend that all these people were part of the protest. They were not. This was actually quite a nasty thing on the part of the opposition, because you don't hijack peaceful parties and, you know, where children with parents come to see all sorts of entertaining things, and then suddenly groups of protesters start to hijack these celebrations and pretend that it's a massive protest. That I completely deplore. This is not a way to protest.
Okay, so Oleg, did you smuggle yourself into Russia Day protests and pretend as if they were part of your big crowd and disrupt their celebration? That's the charge. Did you do it?
Well, what I could see is that the majority of people around me, they were clearly part of the protest crowd. We did have, there was a celebration there. It was in a bit of a different part of the street, and it was clearly smaller than the number of people who went to protest. In any case, people who dislike corruption have the same rights to gather in their home city as the people who don't care about corruption. So I don't see why some people coming there is legal while others is hijacking.
Okay, but it might not be that they don't care about corruption. They were just celebrating Russia Day. Be that as it may, you sent us some cell phone footage that you took. I just want to call that up. James, if you can call that up, let's talk through some of it. I'll tell you what we're looking at so you can tell me what was going on during that footage. Let's have a look at your cell phone footage, Oleg, and let's see what we're seeing here. I see something that looks like a bus. Policemen taking people, putting them onto the bus. They look like riot police. Oleg, do you feel they were brutal? Did they rough you guys up?
Well, they clearly used too much force because nobody, at least nobody whose detentions I saw was trying to resist. Nobody had any weapons. Nobody tried to fight with the police, to clash with it. They were arresting very young people, old people, middle-aged people. They were using excessive force, clearly. Several people are at hospitals now, including a female activist, one of the leaders of an opposition party, who was punched in the face and suffered concussion. I was filming the scene. I wasn't holding any signs or anything. I was just pushed on the ground, knocked down, and I injured my ankle. And I believe there are dozens of people who sustained some injuries. So this was clearly not justified by the way these people could pose any threat whatsoever to public safety.
Okay, and it's good that you sent us that footage, and we thank you for that footage. Oleg, Alexander Nekrasov, I want to focus a little bit on Navalny now. From the outside, it looks as if this man is a threat to the state, if the state deems him a threat enough to arrest him on the morning of a protest day. It seems as if they don't like this guy, and maybe they need to keep him quiet.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that if Mr. Navalny tried the same thing somewhere in Western Europe, for example, making a film about corruption of a prime minister or some leading businessman, he would be in jail in no time. So as regards this particular thing, I would say that Mr. Navalny is enjoying quite a lot of freedom in Russia. I would even tell you that some people in Russia suspect that he's actually in cahoots with the Kremlin, because otherwise how can you explain that he's got so much publicity and so much freedom and can do basically whatever he wants? I mean, let's imagine somebody doing a film about the prime minister of some Western country and accusing him of corruption. That is remarkable by any chance. But what I'd like to make a point about is that the important thing is that the protests did take place in Russia. They took place in several cities, which I can't say, for example, about some countries in Western Europe like France, where the President Macron won a very suspicious election, where the parliamentary election is very suspicious as well.
But we're getting a bit diverted
You
now.
would expect...
Sure, we're getting diverted. Let's focus. Let's keep our focus on Russia. And fair enough, you want to give analogies, right? Mr. Nekrasov, to answer my question directly, is Navalny a threat as an opposition member to President Vladimir Putin?
No, I think Alexey Navalny is not a threat to Putin and the government. I think he is a threat in a way to some of the oligarchs which are behaving in a strange way. But as for Putin, I don't think he's a threat. I think Putin, if he runs next year, he will win without any problems. So we are just witnessing a certain nervousness on the part of the authorities, which are doing things sometimes I think they shouldn't be doing. I think they should not be, dealing with protests in the way they did. But the police forces all over the world do that. So unfortunately, it's the reality of modern life.
Okay. Oleg Kozlovsky. Now, granted, my source for this poll was RT, right? I'm gonna grant that. But they say that Navalny was polling at 2%, and there's absolutely no chance he would have any chance at the presidency come next year. Digging a bit deeper, there's a YouTube video which shows Mr. Navalny comparing Muslim immigrants to cockroaches on a YouTube video in a promo for a Russian pro-gun law. With all of that in mind, he doesn't seem to be the most progressive opposition hero that maybe some people on the outside are hoping for. Is that fair, Oleg?
No, actually, I've seen that video, and besides it was filmed about 10 years ago, and he was comparing to cockroaches burglars who would come into somebody's home. He was campaigning in favor of the right to possess guns.
But you knew what he meant by that. He was talking about immigrants, right?
He
wasn't talking about burglary, he was talking about immigrants.
No, he wasn't. It was a video about a completely different issue. So anybody who would say it is about migrants either didn't watch this video or just outright lying. So you should just watch it yourself.
I don't speak Russian. I'm taking other people's interpretations.
It should be somewhere within the subtitles.
Okay, fair enough. Polling at 2%. Tell me.
Speaking of his, his polling. Yeah, I've seen the same figures, and I think it's probably something around that. But we have to consider that Navalny, at the moment, is claimed to be barred from elections at all. So people who say they want to vote for Navalny are the ones who believe that he will be on the ballot in the first place.
Yeah, but nobody's
putting
a gun to their heads, right? Nobody's putting a gun to their heads and saying, hey, who are you going to vote for in the election? This is just asking people their opinion, and only 2% said they support him. So how on earth is he going to overturn Vladimir Putin in a presidential election?
It's quite simple. Most people don't believe he's going to be allowed to run. So what's the point of saying I'm going to vote for the guy who will not even be on the ballot? So they mentioned Zyuganov or Zhirinovsky, the two people who are considered a kind of loyal opposition. So this is why Navalny is ranked 4th, I think, after Putin, Zyuganov, and Zhirinovsky. But the very moment if Navalny is allowed to run, I think this figure will change, because more people will see that, wow, now we have somebody from the real opposition on the ballot, so we should reconsider our choice. And in 2013, Navalny ran for the mayor of Moscow. In June that year, he had polls gave him about 2 or 3% of support among Moscovites. In September, it was 27% by official count. So he managed to increase his support 9-fold. And it's not granted that he won't be able to do this again. But even though I personally would not bet that he's going to win, even if he's allowed to run, even if he ranks 2nd, it will change the Russian political system completely, because for the first time it will be the real opposition, not the loyal opposition, that will claim that it represents a significant part of the Russian population. And Putin will not be able to ignore calls for democracy anymore.
Okay, so Alexander Nekrasov, interesting point there. Why not support a real opposition, not the loyal opposition, no matter how small the numbers are right now? And they're standing on platforms like anti-corruption. You agree corruption's a problem, so why not throw your weight behind these guys who are trying to make incremental change?
Well, first of all, the opposition in Russia is split, it's divided, it's got no program to offer, and Mr. Navalny basically, apart from his anti-corruption stance, he offers nothing. So it's a one-issue opposition, you know, like UKIP in Britain, which had one issue, and now it's gone. UKIP is gone now in Britain. It's the same with Mr. Navalny, because when you don't offer anything apart from this battle with corruption, okay, we accept corruption is a problem, but corruption is a problem in every country, not just Russia. So that is why I don't see any future for him, because he's got no program. I agree in a certain way that he doesn't have access to a lot of media. He doesn't have the same publicity as the other opposition leaders or Putin. But you see, he has to have a program, a manifesto, and he is lacking that. And until he has something specific to offer people in the economy, in social welfare, nobody's going to listen to him. It's going to be this small protest minority who will protest anyway.
Okay.
See? So that
good
doesn't
point.
work like this.
Okay, so let's get a final comment from Oleg. Oleg, your leader's a one-issue man. He's a one-trick pony. What else does he have?
Well, I would disagree with that. Of course, while corruption stands big in his program, what he offers is a political reform, and this is the first thing that has to be completed in Russia, at least in my belief, before any other reforms can be seriously addressed and other issues tackled. So Navalny clearly stands for a more democratic, more liberal system with separation of powers, with no censorship, etc., etc. This is a big thing. It will require several years to complete.
Okay, gentlemen, I've got to move on. It's been a pleasure talking to both of you, Alexander Nekrasov and Oleg Kozlovsky. Thanks so much.
Thank you.